the moments like that, or when you get to play with people who are better than you, who have like been on the block so many times, who have this experience, that's what really inspires you and brings up your level of musicianship, because obviously you have to hang on.
Welcome to episode 88 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. www.lemurmusic.com. Everything you need for the double bass. This was a very special week for Lemur Music and the Lemur Music family. Founder of Lemur Music, Mr. Murray Grodner, turned 100 years old on Tuesday, August 23rd. A very, very happy birthday to Mr. Murray Grodner. In other news, Lemur Music is presenting Bass Benefits by the Beach on September the 3rd. This is a gathering of local artists and musicians to raise funds for programs supporting those with special needs and the Silver Lake Music Conservatory. Head over to lemurmusic.com for more information. Musicians, artists, if you have some tunes you'd like to have released into the world, check out Finay.com. Finay.com is a music distribution platform created by musicians for musicians. They incorporate blockchain and NFT technologies. It is free to sign up and free to upload your content. Also, check out episode 76 of the Bass Shed podcast, where I talk to the owners of the company about the company and specifically the blockchain and NFT technologies, because I didn't know anything about that stuff, like at all. If you're also unfamiliar with it, head over to episode 76, learn about it while I learn about it. Check out Finay.com. Folks, if you're teaching private lessons, check out blinklesson.app. This software is the one-stop shop and has all the tools and resources you're going to need for managing a private lessons studio. Go to thebasshed.com, click on the logo for Blink Lessons, and get an extended free trial period. Yes. It is a 30-day trial period. You have a month. You got a month to check it out, snoop around. I love the software. Head over to thebasshed.com, click on it, start your 30-day free trial period for managing your private lessons studio. Blinklesson.app. All right, my guest on episode 88 is double bassist and electric bassist Benjamin J. Shepherd. Ben was born and raised in Wellington, New Zealand. A little backstory here. Ben started playing when he was 7 years old. 11 years later, when he's 18, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue a full-time music career and to study the bass with legends, Charlie Haden, Alphonso Johnson, Darek, Oles. All those dudes are crushing. He studied with them at the California Institute of Arts, also known as CalArts. His studio and live credits include Chance the Rapper. Ben was the bassist on Grammy-winning album Coloring Book. He has also worked with Kamasi Washington, Ritenour, Patrice Rushen, Marquis Hill, Dave Weckl, Billy Childs, Peter Erskine, Simon Phillips, Jeff Lorber, Mike Stern, John Beasley and MONKestra, which was a Grammy-nominated and winning group and record. He has also worked with Miguel Atwood Ferguson and many, many more. Benjamin also leads his own group, showcasing his original compositions, as well as co-leads a duo-based group called Benjamin and Deva with singer-songwriter Tara Deva. He currently endorses Ibanez basses, Aguilar amplification, AccuGroove cabinets, Groove Gear accessories, GH strings, and exotic pedals. I met Ben some years ago just on the scene in Los Angeles, and I remember when he kind of hit the scene and it was just, he was on everybody's gig all the time. Like, cool, here's the new group at, whatever club with whatever cats. Ben was on the gig, just crushing it. Ben is a ridiculous bass player. Check him out whenever and however you get the chance. Listening to him play is so incredibly inspiring. Here it is. Here's my interview with Grammy Award-winning double bassist and electric bassist Benjamin J. Shepherd.
Hey, Ryan.
Dude, how you been, man? It's been a while. When did you move? When did you leave LA?
Well, actually, I'm just visiting here for a while.
Okay.
Just for a little bit. My parents are down here and all that, so we're just kind of hanging out and whatnot. But
did you? Was that pandemic induced?
That was part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we just needed to kind of just get a break, and we had, being around, family as well, and it's a chance for my parents to also get to be around their, granddaughter as well. So it's
right.
It all works out.
How old's your daughter?
She's 4 years old.
Wow.
So, exactly. Yeah. The time just goes by. It's like, okay, yeah. I'm counting the gray hairs on my head already.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty cool. It's like, all right, getting older and whatnot. So.
Some of it's cool until you realize you just have heartburn all day.
Right.
That's just a part of my day now.
Right, and realizing, I can't really eat so much of the stuff that I used to in my 20s.
I know.
Like, okay, yeah. A lot of those late.
This is a thing. Oh, geez.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, though it's we're just chugging along, and it's been great to, of course, got these two cats there right here, so which is really good, especially the new one.
Let me see it.
Right,
what do you got there?
This is this is my brand new custom made
the new
Ibanez BTB. This was made at the Los Angeles custom shop.
Okay.
And this was to my specifications, and yes, it's based on a BTB model. Obviously, that body shape is very, but there are some differences from a typical BTB. Usually, a BTB is about 35-inch scale. Okay. A little longer. This is 34. I like the 34, just so I don't have to reach down so much. That's the really cool thing about it. It's really comfortable. The neck, like the grip and the width essentially is the same.
Okay.
Of my groove line bass here that a lot of people have seen me play. So
also an Ibanez.
Also an Ibanez. Yeah. I only play Ibanez basses. I don't have any other basses apart from the upright bass, which is a Shen. But all my bass guitars are Ibanez. But this one, of course,
if the video of this doesn't get released, let's talk about the pickup configuration. So you have two single coils and a P bass style in the middle.
Yeah.
And what looks to be air traffic control knobs. I think I'm counting about 29 toggle switches on this bass.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. One is for room service, there's a wake-up call, ejection seat. Yeah, exactly. When the gig is done and you want your car to, as soon as you get out the door, your car is waiting for you right there. Amazing. Exactly. So this pickup configuration is not anything new. We've seen this before on other basses, particularly someone like Stu Ham, like on his old Fender Urge bass. Jimmy Earl is another person that I've seen on who's done that. Well, I just wanted to do something a little different, essentially from what I've typically done, just to try something new, and I've been digging it. So essentially, the electronics in this instrument, it's quite almost like a Frankenstein. This is what makes it very custom. They're all different, and I wanted to have different elements of things that I've tried over the years that I've really enjoyed. So these two pickups, the same pickups in my groove line right here, and these are
the single coil that you're pointing to. Yeah.
These are called the Sonic Arch Cap pickups, made by Ibanez, and they're radiused as well, which is really cool. Yeah. So you get a pretty even attack on the strings.
But that's since it's a 6-string, that's probably got a pretty flat radius on the fingerboard side of the neck.
It's not so flat. There is a slight radius. I can't tell you what the curve is, but when you look at it,
there's some shape to it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which is cool. I mean, it's the same on this one as well.
Is it the same headstock too, or is it just the same neck? A little bit different headstock.
Yeah, okay. This is a BTB headstock essentially. Okay. It's mainly the neck that is very close to this. This one's just a little thinner.
Okay.
I wanted to have something just a little thinner. This one has a little more thickness to it. So yeah, with the electron, this is the pickups. These are essentially in the typical 60s jazz bass spacing.
Okay.
Which is the same on this instrument too. And I really like that sound, especially there's a vibe about that whole back pickup in the 60s that I like.
60s versus 70s, yeah. But
yeah, now, which I prefer.
Wasn't the neck always the same? Like the neck jazz pickup was always in the same place. It was just the 70s that they bumped it closer to the bridge.
Yeah, just a little bit. And that makes such a difference.
It does.
Obviously, when we listen to people like Marcus Miller, that slap sound is very distinctive of a 70s jazz bass, with that being just slightly closer to the bridge.
Right, you get that little extra tension coming off the bridge.
Exactly, a little more brightness as well. But I really like the 60s. That's me, that's my preference. And then this P pickup is not typically in a typical P bass position.
Yeah, it looks closer to the bridge than it would normally be.
Which is really cool because it's just a little different.
Yeah.
But I think the cool thing is that it can fit in between these two pickups. Yeah. And that's an Aguilar pickup, so it's totally different from that. It's just because they were one of the only pickup companies that have a 6-string P bass pickup on hand, ready to go. I know Kerry Nordstrand does one, but at the time when we were doing this, I don't think it was available. But speaking of Nordstrand, the preamp is a Nordstrand preamp. Because I've played some basses with Nordstrand preamps in there, and they've just been absolutely wonderful. And so I wanted to include that in there. So now the switching. Essentially, the switches, the 3 on the top here.
Right. So for the audio version of this, there's a row of 3 toggles on top, followed by a row of 2 toggles on the bottom, and then we have 5 knobs. So we'll go through all that. Absolutely,
yeah. So the 3 switches on the top are just on and off switches for each pickup.
Oh, okay.
Just as simple like that. So right now, when they're all down, the bass is off.
Okay.
When I put on the first switch, it's this neck pickup.
The neck single coil.
Yep. And then the one in the middle is the P bass Aguilar pickup. And so forth. And then so I can have different combinations, which is really cool. I can have all 3 on if I want. I can have the neck single coil and the P bass and vice versa. Like
now, I'm curious about this because when I was co-designing my signature, I was reading out a lot about pickup placements and phase cancellation. Now I know that when both jazz pickups on a standard jazz are full out, you're gonna experience some phase cancellation. What about this P pickup so close to the neck or the bridge jazz pickup? Do you experience any phase cancellation there?
No.
Anything you notice? Like the sound doesn't suffer? You're really getting full of both?
I'm definitely getting full. That's for sure.
Okay. Got some brand new strings on there too. That's what it sounds
actually, these are newer strings. I mean, what you're probably hearing too is my microphone.
Yeah,
probably also picking up the
I'm
noise.
not sitting in front of a bass amp. Right?
I've
You're in New Zealand.
Right. But essentially, I mean, I put these strings on a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, I've been playing this bass so much that they're already they've worn in a lot. So that's the other thing too. But yeah,
I haven't. Nickel or steel?
These are nickel. They're GHS. I use GHS strings, and I like the nickel wound just because they have a nice slick feel.
Smoother, not so bright.
Exactly. I'm not so much into the bright, but I can get the brightness if I want. Like for slapping, it's totally doable. That's why, you got an active preamp. So the two switches on the bottom, essentially, one of them is an active and passive switch, which is very handy.
Sure.
Obviously, the battery dies. This is 18-volt battery.
Oh wow. Okay.
The battery
a generator
dies
to plug right into the bass.
Exactly. It's almost like an alembic, where you have like a power amp. It's really cool. But yeah, active and passive, and then I have a mid frequency switch. So just when it's in the up position, I don't know the exact frequencies, but I can give you an idea what it sounds like. So in the up position, it's doing the lower mid. So right now, it's flat, and then if I turn it up, and then it does that on the down position. It does the higher mids.
Okay.
So you can adjust it however you want it, which is really cool.
Yeah. Super versatile.
Very. And then typical 3-band EQ, and then a master volume knob, and then this other knob I have is just a passive tone control. Okay. Which works in both active and passive because I still like like on the old passive basses, I like to have, instead of having to use a treble, which doesn't necessarily kind of cut all the treble.
Right.
I like to have a tone knob that actually makes it warm, but takes away the string noise if necessary.
Sure.
And then also I can, even with the tone rolled all the way on, like to its full brightness, I can still get a nice warm sound, but with a little brightness, a little more vintage jazz bass, with the treble rolled all the way off,
right? Which
is really cool. Sometimes I'm not so much into like the hi-fi, like tweeter box sound.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's a time and place for it.
Yeah, I feel like that sound is, very much a part of specific genre vocabulary. Like the gospel guys kind of have that sound, and that's crushing for that genre. Because they're a lot of slap stuff, really percussive playing, and all that'll pop. Yeah,
definitely cut through. I think just for my ears, sometimes, and for me personally, I can't handle too much string noise, especially if you got cymbals and whatnot that are in that register as well, hi-hats, and sometimes it can just be, maybe it's just my ears, my hearing is going. I don't know.
It comes along with the heartburn.
Exactly. Yeah, and the gray hairs, So yeah, exactly. And then this is a bolt-on, of course. It's not a neck through. The typical BTB's neck through. I asked for a bolt-on because I've never had a neck through bass, so I'm not necessarily used to a neck through, and also it's just an easier build when it's a bolt-on.
Right.
And it's just something that I'm used to, and that was something that when I was giving the specifications of this instrument, the dude said to me, like, look, don't go all extravagant and put things that you are not familiar with, because we might make something and you might not actually like it. Because that is common.
So how did you feel about, because this is the process I went through. I sent him the specs. I had no idea how it was going to turn out. Exactly. And then I even had like a custom pickup built. And Howard Ulyate built the pickup, and we were talking back and forth about it. And I'm like, well, man, what if we just switch the coils on this pickup? Like a complete experiment. I have no idea how it's going to sound. And then finally all of it showed up one day, and I'm just like, all right, well, what did I really do here? Like, how is this going to turn out? So you didn't play any of these ideas before you sent him the specs. You're just like, no, this seems cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what really helped was like using stuff that was familiar to myself. So obviously the wood combinations, the body is very similar to my Ibanez groove line. So older body with ash tops.
Okay.
but I wanted to have a maple neck so that it can just be. This is obviously a rosewood, fingerboard.
Sure. It almost looks ebony, like it's a dark piece of rosewood.
Right. It definitely is. This has such a beautiful, warm, solid sound, and it's very heavy as well.
Yeah.
That's why it's such solid as a rock. This is much lighter.
Is it chambered? Is this one chambered?
This is not chambered. This is just a solid body. But a lot of the hardware, this is a hip shot bridge. It's very light, and the tuner is a hip shot, and I have a detuner for the B string as well.
Yeah, you got the Goucher knob.
Exactly, yeah. Which is really cool. I've never really done that, but I thought, well, why not?
So does it go down to A?
This. It does, yeah.
Okay.
So,
oof.
Exactly. And I'm
That's
still
meaty.
I'm still figuring out how to play it at that tension, because obviously when you do it, it's way more loose and floppy, and just getting the attack so that it doesn't buzz so much.
How are you processing this mentally? Like when the string is tuned to A and it's detuned, and you go to reach for a note, and in your mind it's going to be this note at that fret.
Oh,
do you have to always be thinking whole step down, whole step down, whole step down, whole step down?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of time when I haven't really figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use the concept of back when I was younger and playing 4 strings and doing the whole drop D thing on the occasional tune, and that seemed to be fine. But I guess when you have so many more strings and then you add this
one variable,
exactly, that just adds so much. Like what? So definitely, I mean, when I play along with records just to practice with that, I definitely mess up for sure. So it's something I just have to practice more, because I try to think about it and it doesn't work. That's the thing.
It's I had my custom signature that I co-designed was a 5-string fretless, and I had it strung E through C for a little while, and I was practicing on it.
Nice.
And finally took it to a gig, and I brought a standard tuned 5-string to the gig also, just in case.
Sure.
As a safety net. I lasted like a tune, with it strung and I'm just like, I can't think about it. Like, I can't process this string and all that with so much conditioning of where these notes are going to be.
Right.
So I'm going to be a fourth off, and then I'm thinking about what to do, how I'm going to play through changes and stuff and process the bass. It was too much. It was way too much.
It really is. Yeah. It is just so much. And when you just want to play music, just want to play bass, and you got and I know, I'm sure you've had conversations with some of the older cats when the 5-string and the 6-string first came around, and some of these cats switched to playing 5-string, and they went through the same thing as well, with this extra string. Like,
I know
what's going on.
When did you make the jump? Did you go right from 4 to 6, or did you have the Gateway 5 in there?
No, I definitely had the Gateway 5. About 20 years ago, I jumped to 5-string. I was playing a lot of 4-string, and I still have the 4-string that I, which is also an Ibanez, just an Ibanez sound gear from the early 90s.
Oh,
wow. I played that for a long time, and it got to a point where I was wanting that low B.
Yeah.
At the time, I also did not know what an octave pedal was either. And so I'd be listening to some records, and I know that the player is playing a 4-string bass, but how is this person getting those low notes? Like, are they tuning? I thought they just tuned down. So of course I wanted to go to the 5-string. So I got that. And then eventually when I was 14, I was starting to get more into playing jazz. And of course people like John Patitucci.
Sure.
Jimmy Haslip.
Haslip, right.
Yeah, even Nathan East as well plays a lot of six
Yeah.
string, and I'm like,
Anthony
oh
Jackson,
man, exactly. Yes, that's also when I discovered Anthony Jackson. I'm like, wow, I need a six string. And growing up in New Zealand, they didn't really have six string. Well, they didn't actually in six string basses in the music shops.
Really?
They really didn't. Yeah,
Okay.
it's like the cats. Some of the cats in New Zealand who did have six strings, they had bought those basses overseas, like in Australia, or if they'd gone wherever. But so I'm like, how am I going to get a six string? So eventually I was able to special order a C string and do the whole, like you mentioned, do the whole E to C so that I could get that upper range, but I still missed that low B. So eventually, I got a six string, which was actually which was an Ibanez BTB bass, and I had that.
So they've been a part
years.
of your. Ibanez has been a part of your just career since day one.
Exactly, almost since day one. My very first bass was
let's get into this.
Very cheap.
Yeah, me too.
Look,
there's no shame. There's no shame. Mine was a PV Fury P bass. They cost $125 from a pawn shop. Oh man, it was better
than what I had. I think my one was something called a Pro Axe or something. At the time, I mean, I was 7 years old. Yeah, I didn't care. I had a bass guitar. Yeah, like, oh my gosh, I have a bass guitar.
And when you're just starting out, you can't tell the difference of any of it. You know?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't care. And eventually upgraded to the Ibanez. Mm-hmm. And it was so amazing. An active bass, it's smaller, has a nice slim neck. It was perfect for, especially at the time, like 8, 9 years old on that bass.
Man, I've told students a lot about Ibanez basses. Yeah. Specifically when they want to go from 4 to 5 string, because of the string spacing on the Ibanez 5, it's a really easy transition for your hand. Now, where the strings are is a little bit different, but you're not holding this really big neck. You know, like the Yamaha TRB has a huge neck.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like that was my first 5 string, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is obnoxious. But the string spacing was normal. You know, it was equivalent to the 4. But Ibanez really has a good thing going with that smaller neck thing. It's great for younger students, or if you want to have a bass with more strings and not have a, you know.
Exactly.
Boat paddle.
Exactly. Especially that I guess they get that concept from a lot of their guitars. When you look at a lot of the guitar players who play their guitars, a lot of them like amazing shredders, technicians. It's like super easy to play. So I could see why they put that concept into the bass guitars as well. Yeah. Now my 5 string, when I had a 5 string, it wasn't an Ibanez. It was actually a Washburn.
Washburn. Okay.
And it was great that it was an old XB model. I loved it, but obviously I went back to the Ibanez with the 6 string, and then have stayed true with the Ibanez. So and I have had Fenders and all that over the years. I even had a Marcus Miller Fender bass, a couple of jazz basses that I put together.
75 reissue that the Marcus was before he sent it over to Roger and Sadowski put the pre on it. But I had that bass when it was just from Fender, like the Japanese 75 reissue.
Right.
That was a great jazz bass. Like I like that bass.
They were very popular. And of course, when the 5 strings came out, you saw a lot of cats using those as well. Yeah. I think for me, I just wasn't a huge fan of at least the one that I had. Maybe it was a later model, but I wasn't a fan of the preamp. It was just too mid-scoopy for me. And I guess the thing that you had to do was you had to get the Roger Sadowski preamp and like put that in.
Right. Yeah. So to get the mids. I mean, if you want like more of the Jocko thing, you're going to need the mids.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I love having a full tonal palette naturally, and being able to cut or boost. Just so it's there.
Yeah. Now, is this
'cause
bass going to
otherwise-
be on the market? Is there going to be a retail aspect for this bass?
I don't know. This is just a custom
Just
one
kind
off
of
for me.
for you,
but
yeah.
It's possible that could be a thing in the future, especially
Nice.
the 3 pickup configuration.
Yeah, they don't have anything like that. I haven't even seen anything like that since Stu's bass.
Yeah, it's not very common as such. I think there's a boutique company that make the short scale basses, Sarek. I've seen them.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Sarek, yeah. I've seen that they make some basses with 3 pickups in there. And then I think maybe like Madison over in Europe, the ones that like Yannick Guzdala plays, and Hendrik Lindner. They've made some basses that, I mean, pretty much any company could make them. It's really no big deal. I think it's just the whole 2 pickup has just been like an industry standard.
Yeah, I mean, everything. I really like when companies kind of break the Fender model a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
Because everything is a derivative of something that Leo Fender came up with. It's like it's a jazz or a Music Man. So it's like anytime they do something that breaks the Fender model, breaks the Fender body shape, or just breaks the Fender model a little bit, I'm always a little bit more interested in, because let's see what else can happen, with the instrument.
Absolutely. I guess an early example of something like that, of breaking that model, would be like Alembic or Carl Thompson. If we're looking like the late 60s, early 70s, something that's just totally different than a Fender, which is really cool. And then, of course, the bass having to use an external like power supply to power it, and having this the Alembic has a very unique, just the controls itself. And some of them I've seen with multiple, more than 2 pickups as well.
Okay. I think I've played one way back in the day. But that's a bass you don't see around a lot.
Not a whole lot. I mean, that's a very boutique.
Boutique. I don't even think I can go to the amp shop. I don't even think they have one in stock. If someone just wanted to check one out for, they're not going to let you check it out just to check out. But if you wanted to, if you had the money and were interested and wanted to check one out. And I remember them being really long scale. I remember them, some of them being really, really long.
Yeah, they have some very long scale. I know the ones that Stanley Clarke plays are short scale.
Okay. That's interesting, because he's tall. He's
huge. And it's a super thin neck as well. And he does use the lighter gauge roto sound strings on there. So that's why he get very percussive and a lot of bends as well. And it is an interesting electronic system as well, how essentially it's a stereo bass. Each pickup, just like the Rickenbacker rotor, the Rico sound, right?
Right. Someone else who broke the Fender mold, that very, very specific sound.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, how Chris Squire got his sound, each pickup into a different amp, which is really cool.
Yeah, I know.
Which is wild.
More amps. That's not for the local gigging bass player. That's not a working bass player thing.
No, absolutely not. But I think that the fact that kind of technology and option is there, I think is just it's cool to see that is something that is available and can possibly be done. Obviously, we know of Billy Sheehan, who wires his bass in stereo as well, which is to get his sound. So it's always really cool just seeing the different concepts that have just over the last 50 years.
I think that's it, man. I think it is. It's fundamentally it's a concept of sound, and it's what were the records, or who were the bass players that you were checking out that really helped shape your concept of sound?
Sure. For me, it definitely starts with Stanley Clarke, just because, but especially when I first got into the bass guitar, my dad had some Stanley Clarke records, and so of course, like that was the first thing that I heard as well. That album, If This Bass Could Only Talk.
Yeah.
And that's what I was like, wow, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Just the percussiveness, because I had just come from playing the drums.
Right.
So I was like, okay, this like sounds like drums, but it's got something. And then you could play bass. And then John Entwistle was another person early on that I was listening to a lot. So the Who.
Were these records that are around the house? Because those are very time specific, or at least timeline wise, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Those are in the same era, like early Stanley records and the Who.
Absolutely, yeah. These were records that my dad had. So yeah, Stanley Clarke, the Who. He had all the Weather Report records.
Mm-hmm.
So I had just heard a bit of Jaco, but I guess I hadn't got into it straight away. I was more into playing rock and roll at that stage. So I was getting into Pink Floyd.
Okay.
And
then some of those early Stanley records are the perfect crossover for that. Before you get into Weather Report and you got, Zaywinul doing all the weird bomb sounds.
Absolutely. It really was, especially as I got older and starting to get more into jazz, the whole thing of jazz fusion. Of course, so for me, Stanley Clarke being the center of my bass universe of how I branched off to discover all these different musicians. So of course, from Stanley, like I go back to like people, like Miles, Charlie Parker, Dizzy, whatnot, Coltrane, and then going forward to Chick Corea, Herbie, and then even Alan Holdsworth, Tony Williams. So like it just
you just start following the different branches and you end up
exactly Charles Mingus, of course. So that's the thing. There was a bass player in particular I really enjoyed who played with Pink Floyd later on, like after Roger Waters. There's a guy named Guy Pratt, who's a British bass player. He actually played a lot with Roxy Music and also with Madonna as well.
Oh, wow.
But he in particular was how I actually got into the octave pedal. So he was using it with Pink Floyd. And this is the dude I was referring to where I'm like, he's playing a 4-string Spectre bass, but how is he getting like all those low notes? But also it sounds like that you can clearly hear the double.
Right, you can hear both octaves,
Like, what's going on? Yeah. Like, eventually, I don't know, I think it was a magazine or whatever, or maybe a music shop, where someone was trying out an octave pedal, and I was like, there, that's that sound!
That's it!
What is that?
Yeah.
Like, this is me, like, at 11 years old, going, what is that? And of course, it's someone was trying out an OC2 octave pedal, and I said, okay, I need to have
that's the holy grail of octave pedals.
Exactly. And then of course Pino Palladino being another person who's a master of the octave pedal with the fretless, but Guy Pratt early on was it for me, and he does some great stuff with the octave pedals. Like there's a Pink Floyd tune in particular called Sorrow, where he really goes to town. And then also Michael Jackson's Earth Song, he plays on that one with the octave pedal. Okay. It's just beautiful. So I still to this day, I love the octave pedal a lot. Are you
still playing the Boss? Or you still have the OC2?
I don't. I actually use an EBS pedal. I did have the OC pedal for quite a while. And then I tried out the EBS, and I was like, "Oh, I really enjoy this." So it was just my preference.
Yeah, what was that for you that made you prefer the EBS? Like I specifically remember talking to Steve Jenkins about effects. Yeah, and I even like after we did the podcast thing, like I've hit him up on the side. I'm like, all right, dude, I need to know what's up. Like you're deep in the pedal game, I'm not a super pedals guy, but I was interested in some specific sounds. What was it for you, specifically with the EBS octave pedal, and what is it when you know you land on the right brand of effect? Like, what is it that you're kind of hearing?
Yeah, so for me, a big one is tracking, the way that it tracks. And I felt that for me, that the EBS had a little better tracking, especially because I do like to use the octave pedal even in solo. So being able to track when you play some fast stuff, and then even playing like lower down, like down here. I don't have the pedal hooked up, obviously, but playing like this kind of note, wanting it to track down that low and not glitch out.
Sure.
That was, and then also, I felt that for the sound that I was going for.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you prefer digital tracking over analog tracking then? Is there like a common thread through what you respond to with the different trackings? Yeah,
I haven't thought about that. I just, and I don't even know if I mean, maybe the EBS is digital or analog. I'm not too sure. But
it's something I only learned about semi-recently, is like when I was chorus pedal shopping. And I was comfortable with the old Boss, whatever it is, CEB or something. Yeah. But then I realized that there's two of them. There's a gray label and then there's the OG one. I'm like, well, what's the difference? So I'm reading about tracking, and the gray label is the digital tracking. I'm like, oh, that's a thing. So then, I went down the rabbit hole of reading people's commentary about digital tracking and stuff like this.
Right.
I mean, I haven't A-B'd them. This was during the pandemic, and like all I could get was the digital tracking one, because like nothing was coming in. Like all the companies were backlined or, held up. Nobody was bringing in new equipment.
Right.
So I could get the digital ones, and I checked it out. But it was something I was unaware of. I never thought about digital versus analog tracking.
I'm totally unaware of it. You just mentioned it just now. Like, maybe that is a thing. It's interesting to know. Maybe it is. But the EBS, it just felt a little more natural sounding to me, especially when you turn off the dry signal and just have just the wet signal. So just the octave below. Yeah. It felt a little, I wanted to have the sound of like just a very smooth sub bass sound, not so much like a electronica. And that's the unique thing about the OC pedal, is that when you have it just on that low octave, it gives a very unique, like kind of like dubsteppy almost sound, which I could understand is very popular amongst players who really want to get that. So people like Steve Jenkins, of course, Tim LaFave. I mean, even Yannick gets into that as well when he does his that kind of stuff. He's got a ridiculous pedal collection. Exactly. I mean, he probably has like 10 different OC2s. I know, right? Which is insane. And and since we're talking about digital and analog, there's probably a bunch of them that are
right. He knows which are which, and exactly. He'd be a good guy to talk to about all that stuff.
Absolutely, for sure. One Alderete as well as another guy.
Who is that?
One Alderete.
Oh, I don't think I know him.
The dude from the Mars Volta.
Oh, okay.
He's a huge pedal guy, and actually I think that's the reason why Yannick is such a big pedal guy as well. Is that those two guys put together like a pedal library. Essentially.
I see. I forgot what record it is, but Michelle Indigocello plays one on some record, and like her, I mean, it's an amazing bass sound. She always has an amazing bass sound. Absolutely. But that octave sound. And I think I probably, knowing me, tried to figure out what she was using or what she did on that record. But that's probably one of my favorite octave sounds.
And she and probably a big contributor to that is OC2 matched with a Fender jazz bass.
I think she's got a 64J or something.
So exactly. Like it's those two. made for each other.
Yeah.
That's a classic combination. Because even Jaco played an OC pedal. I think it might have been an OC1 or something, or OC2.
Really?
But yeah, there are times where you would, like live, you'd hear him play with an octave. I think even on Teen Town, he might have even used an octave on that, especially on
Really? I'm going to have to go back and check that out. I never thought about it.
But definitely live, that he'd use an octave pedal at times, like just like real, like sparingly.
Yeah.
Like
That's interesting for him.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like for the like late 70s, early 80s, it was being a newer thing.
Yeah, because like when he would use chorus, it's a ton of chorus. When he would do like the distortion thing, it's a ton of fuzz. Like he was always There was always like
old
effect
amps.
on or off. There's no real blend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean that's how it was back then. Anyway, is like now obviously we can just blend it in, so it's just like so like subtle.
Just get a little texture.
Exactly. Back then it was just like 0 to like 100.
Yeah, exactly.
And the acoustic 360 bass amps that he was using with the fuzz.
Yeah.
And he didn't use a foot switch. Obviously, we've seen the videos of him like cranking it on.
Yeah. What is it? The Joni Mitchell Shadow of Light like DVD where he just turns around. I think it's him and who was on that? Was that Alex Acuna? Don Elias?
That's Don Elias. So Don Elias was the drummer.
Yeah.
Of course, Michael Brecker, Lau Mays, Pat Metheny. Yeah, I mean it was like an incredible band.
I love that. I love that record. But on the live, he turns around, just flips the switch, and does his solo bass thing, all Hendrixy.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really amazing. You know, I with Peter Erskine, obviously being played with Jaco so many times, or Weather Report. I asked Peter, I was like, so how loud? Well, first of all, how loud was that band?
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, it was incredibly loud. It's like a rock band."
It's a rock band, right?
How loud was Jaco? And he said, "Oh, probably like if not the loudest." And the reason is he would have 4 of those cabinets on stage. He would have 2 behind him, and then he would have 2 as side fills.
Oh my god!
So whenever he'd walk around the stage, it would be this like huge like sound of just his bass, and those cabinets were an 18-inch speaker,
the 2 18s, right? Oh, okay.
It was a single 18, but it had a folded horn, so because it was designed to throw the sound all the way to the back of the room, so the person at the back of the room is just getting pummeled. Yeah, but that's just with one. You know, you got 4 of them, and you're just like, it's just insane. But I mean, that was the sound of Jaco, and obviously, I wasn't around when Jaco was. Sure. The only times that a lot of us have heard Jaco is on recordings. Right. There must have been, obviously, to hear someone like Jaco in the same room would have been an absolutely different experience. Oh, yeah. To hear his bass with your own ears, because you hear, obviously, the room and everything and the intensity. So that's the thing.
I've never thought about this or never read it, but what kind of rig, maybe you know, would he bring to the 55 bar when he was doing all those punk jazz recorers were bootlegged? Right.
Yeah, like with Mike Stern. And,
and all that. I mean, I didn't even know how many of them there are, but those are some of my favorite Jaco records.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from what I have been told from many sources who were there, he would just plug into whatever was there. Oh, okay. Sometimes someone would bring in a bass rig, and actually towards the end of his life, he was messing around with the Larry Harkey cabinet, which was essentially a converted Ampeg SVT 810. Okay. Larry had made the aluminum cone speakers, and put that in there. And he still has that cabinet to this day. And he says, no one has plugged into it since Jaco has. Oh, and he says, no one ever will. Okay. So, he was museum piece. Exactly. Yeah. But he would plug into that. sometimes he would even when he was playing like rehearsals or recording with Joni Mitchell, she used to use the Roland JC 120, and they made it specifically for her as well.
Oh,
and he would always plug into that, and she'd be like, "Well, what am I gonna plug into?" Because he loved the sound of that. So actually, a lot of the Mingus record was done with Jaco plugged into a JC 120.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It really is.
You've played with Mike Stern also, and you played with Peter Erskine. What did that feel like the first time you got, like the first hit you're gonna do with them, and you're in this lineage of a great like Jaco Pastorius and all the other people that they've all played with, Mike Stern coming from Miles Davis and all that. And now you're a part of your lineage. How'd that feel?
Well, it's first of all, I'd say it is the absolute honor. One of one of the most exciting things that I'm very grateful to have had that opportunity to play with those cats. It was definitely a very memorable moment for me that I'll always remember, especially at the time when I first played with Mike Stern. I was 24 years old.
Within, speaking of Jaco and bass history, I mean, that's how old he was when he cut the record. That's
absolutely
kind of a special time in your career, and how that matches up with all of that.
Yeah, it was just the timing at the time. It worked out because at the time I was also playing with Lee Ritenour in his band, and we were doing a this guitar festival, and Lee said, "Oh well, you can use. Why don't you use some of the cats from my band to play?" And so it was cool. And so we got sent the tunes of Mike's tune, and Mike, meeting Mike for the first time, he was just such a wonderful, warm, charismatic, and excited person. Obviously, this is someone who just lives and breathes music every single day. Like he is music, and he's always down to play. With anyone, it doesn't matter.
He's just
what
in
you
it,
play or who you exactly. You can even hit him up in the middle of the night and be like, "Hey, you want to shed?"
Yeah.
and he's like, "Yeah, okay." It's really cool. So he was always down to practice and always encouraging as well, and just a lot of fun. A lot of fun. That was a cool thing. So that's what made the experience it's so wonderful, was that there's this amazing monstrous musician who I've definitely who we've a lot of us have looked up to and seen a lot of records, but the fact that they're also just such a wonderful human being and is giving me such a great experience, and I'm able to really enjoy and have fun with it. It's definitely made the whole thing so memorable. And same thing with someone like Peter Erskine as well. I was definitely nervous about that at first, because I think because of my weather report background and someone who was very close to Jaco, and the thing that you want to do but also don't want to do as well is play your Jaco stuff.
He's heard it.
Exactly. And also he's just heard so many other people play
he's heard all the clones. He was there for the original, and he's still around for everybody who's topped it since.
Exactly. So the first time playing with him, I was very conscious to not so much do that, even though there was a tune on the very first Dr. Gig that I did with him. We did a weather report tune, where I have to play a fretless melody. Okay. Like Jaco. And this is a tune called...
it a remark you made? Were you playing that?
It wasn't that one. It was a tune called Speechless. Okay. Which is from the self-titled Weather Report album from 1982. Okay. And I know that tune very well, and I'm like, for me, the way that that's played, it has to be phrased the way that Jaco does, because for me, that's what makes it go. And so I had figured out like the chorusing with the delay and all that to get that sound, because that was the only way that I was going to be able to play it, because it was a certain standard and it had to be kind of somehow met on that level, even though by any means I definitely not Jaco at all, but I think channeling that energy and that vibe is something that's going to give way to that song. And so just at sound check, I had that sound close enough, and Peter leant over to me, and he leant over and he went like this, and I'm just like, God, he hates it all. I know he hates it. He's like, you're one of the first people that I've come across that actually has gotten very close to that sound.
Oh yeah,
that chorusing, like, and he's like, how did you do it? I'm just like, I was just using a Boss delay pedal just to kind of get the chorusing so close, because I didn't have a chorus pedal. And then over time, as we got to know each other and play more together, I could start bringing out the Jaco stuff. So like, especially, and he would get a kick out of it too if we would be playing, you know, like stuff like that. Like that, he would, and afterwards he'd be like singing to me. He'd be going do 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 do. So we had a lot of fun, and I think the way that he sees it, because of course I've asked him about all the Jaco stuff, the Jaco, like I like, tell me more, Uncle Peter, tell me more Jaco stuff. Yeah, I think a way is that it keeps the legacy alive. Of not just Jaco, but that kind of music, an era that he was a part of. I mean, these guys at the time, I mean, they were on top of the world, essentially. It was definitely, I mean, it'd be Peter like, was super young too.
You know, to think about another drummer who was in a specific place and time within music history, it'd be like playing bebop with Roy Haynes. You know, just like it's so much. I would love to play that stuff with Roy Haynes. You know what I mean? Like, this is the dude that did it. And it does. It for sure. It keeps pushing that thing forward, because it's such a beautiful part of American music.
That's right. And it's become, so it's also become a vocabulary and a essential, like, standard style of playing the instruments. Obviously, we look at Roy Haynes, we look at Elvin Jones, we look at Tony Williams, Philly Joe. Those ways of playing are obviously studied in jazz school, and also there are a lot of drummers over the time who incorporated that. And it's the same thing with bass, the whole back pickup playing, the ghost notes. This just shows how this instrument has evolved over time from being the typical beginnings. We look at like the Fender P bass, the whole Montgomery, the James Jameson,
Montgomery, solid reference. Yeah, he doesn't get enough love. He doesn't get enough love.
Exactly. And this is a thing I always teach my students is look, the first electric bass player was, as far as we know, really is Montgomery on that
Art Farmer record.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, incredible upright player too, but being also on electric bass really pushed it forward. Yeah. And it's important to, this is a thing, going back to what I was saying about legacy, keeping something alive, is that if we keep talking about these cats, they're still around. Yeah. In some way. And so with Peter seeing me as of the younger generation and being into all these cats like Jaco, it's like, okay, well, we have a future where this is still going to be around. It's going to
live on, and that'll still be relevant, and it's relevant through the players that have, like yourself, that have spent the time to really study it. Not just like play 16th notes or play fast,
Right.
but to like
Right.
really get into not only the vocabulary of Jaco, but his sound, his fire, like the way his
Yeah.
right hand, like the fire in his right hand, not just speed,
insane.
but he just had this edge, that you can hear. I mean, I have, and I'm sure you have too. You hear so many dudes playing the left hand Jaco stuff, but like
Yeah.
so much of it was his right. Like just his
Absolutely.
energy was just it was on
He
fire.
dug
No one
in.
has that feel. Like even if they put it a little on top, he dug in hard.
He really did. And he had high action.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that actually.
And the only reason I know that is my bass teacher back in college at CalArts was Alphonso Johnson.
Yeah, I studied with Alphonso too. Did you
Oh,
talk
you
to him about
did?
Jaco? Yeah, I did. Did you talk to him
absolutely.
about yeah? I felt awkward bringing up Jaco, like
Oh yeah.
because I had before the first couple lessons, I went out and bought a ton. I went out to Amoeba and bought like everything I could find with Alphonso on it.
Yeah.
Like I could be informed about like, okay, dude, I've heard you do this. I heard you do this. Like, ask him questions. I think if I remember right, the weather report was called Tail Spinning.
Yes.
With Alphonso, and I checked it out, and it's a very different weather report experience.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we were talking, and he's like, "Who do you listen to?" And I'm just like, Jaco. Like, you kind of got probably fired from the band for him. I didn't talk to him about that, but I felt awkward talking to him about Jaco.
Sure, just to
amazing human, by the way. Amazing human.
Obviously.
He dropped some like really heavy conceptual information on me that still, I mean, back then completely flipped my thing, and still I think about and talk to with students. He's absolute lovely human and amazing bass player.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Yes. And just for the record, the transition from him to Jaco, Alphonso, he left on good terms. He decided that he wanted to move on and do some other things.
Yeah.
Because his buddy, the great drummer Chester Thompson, was also leaving, but they were in the middle of doing that record Black Market, because the record Black Market is a bit of Alphonso and a bit of Jaco.
Yeah.
And so they had recorded that at the end of one year and were continuing to record it at the beginning of a next year. I think from like 75 to 76 or something. So 76 is when Jaco came on board. So it actually worked out. So there was no like firing or anything. I think it was definitely different with Miroslav, Vitas, and Alphonso. Like Miroslav, they actually asked him to leave.
Oh, really? Because they wanted electric?
Poor dude. I mean, Miroslav is one of my favorites.
Sure.
But they wanted to go into more like funk oriented, like electric bass direction. And Miroslav, we know him as absolutely one of the great upright bass players. Virtuosos. And he played a little bit of electric, but he wasn't like those guys.
Right.
Up.
Did you ever see that DVD with Matheny? Who's it? Matheny, Dave Holland, Herbie.
Oh,
I forgot who's on drums. Maybe
Jack DeJohnette.
Yeah. But Holland pulls out a P bass, and it's the only time I've ever seen Dave Holland play an electric bass. It's funny
he's
to
a
me.
wonder. He's I actually dig his electric bass playing. There's not a whole lot of like, cats who I've known as just being, I'm not going to mention any names, but who are mainly upright bass players, and when they pick up the electric bass, it's like
it's noticeable, and that's nothing to their musicality or proficiency. It's just like it's another instrument, and like dudes who spend a lot of time doubling, like it's hard to dabble on either one, I think, because they're completely different instruments.
Yeah, absolutely, they really are. And for me, the person who was really great at doubling, and the reason why I got into it, John Patitucci.
Sure.
Someone who is, for me, he's the prime example of why I play both instruments.
This is fascinating because Stanley didn't. Stanley,
Now,
you didn't.
yeah. You know what? You know what's interesting? Yes, Stanley is the reason why.
I agree with you, actually.
First,
Like Patitucci, like he was more of a figure as a doubler to me. But the more I've thought about it, like Stanley, I think Stanley was the first bass player band leader to double.
He really was. I mean, because you'd see him on. Well, I mean, he's an upright bass player first.
Yeah,
that was the thing. But you would see him on his own shows, and even I mean with Return to Forever, doubling on both. Obviously, the album Romantic Warrior, he's playing both instruments. So yes, he definitely. You would see him playing both instruments very proficiently, the virtuoso. Yeah. I think what really put because he made me want to pick up the upright bass for sure. After seeing the stuff he was doing, putting the picture together of being being like a working bassist of playing both, I definitely gravitated towards Patitucci.
Yeah.
For some reason, but I think Stanley was there.
For me, it was almost an era thing because he was releasing a lot of current content, or he was going to be on records I was listening to that were coming out as I was getting into it.
Right.
So it was in my face a lot more.
Yeah.
Than, maybe 15 years previously that Stanley had already done it. And I wasn't aware necessarily of the full trajectory of bass history and all that stuff, but like this was happening now, and it was Patitucci who was on the cover of the magazines, and he was a lot more just out there.
Absolutely.
So I was checking him out, and then he just became the guy, and then he's doing the 6-string thing, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And how does he get how's he getting the shape of those lines? Like, what the hell is going on here? And then he's getting the same lines on upright. Like, holy crap. What is all this?
It really is. I mean, and I got to sit down with Patitucci a little bit and ask him some of these questions. There was a show at the
Whale, right?
Yeah, the Blue Whale.
I saw you post about it, and he sat in, which is like, oh my gosh.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just like, come on, man, you gotta come up and play, like for real. And so he played my upright bass, and of course he sounded like himself, which was just amazing. It's like, yes, it's within you. I
got to play his, which was surreal.
Oh, his upright bass.
I got to play his Pullman. Yeah.
Oh, nice. He's had that a long time.
It's
been everywhere.
It was so crazy to play the strings. And I'm like, yeah, that's the sound as close as I can duplicate it. Sound really comes from him and his hands. But man, that's, he was playing piano and I was playing his Pullman. It was surreal.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's awesome, man. He's such a great guy. He was really, when I got to ask him, how, like we were talking about, how, coming up with those lines, how, especially on the 6-string. Yeah. And he said, look, I was just, every chance I got, I was just shedding that bass all the time. He said he even, when he first got that bass, and we're talking about the Ken Smith 6-string.
That was his first.
When I got that bass, he said, I was even taking it out on tours where I wasn't using that bass, but just practicing on it, like on the tour bus or in the hotel room. So he said he was doing a tour with David Sanborn.
Okay.
And that, he had to play Marcus Miller lines and all that, and do dance moves with Hiram Bullock and all that, sing backing vocals. And he's playing a 4-string to do that. He didn't play the 6-string on that gig, but he took it with him just so he could shed, because
just to still be working on it. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, the level of that bass alone, that Ken Smith that he had, the amount of hours that he had put on that instrument was amazing. And I even asked him, I was like, so how many times do you reckon you played Got a Match on that instrument? He's like too many times. Yeah. And I'm just like, I mean, because he got that, he said that was a tune that I wanted to get the back of my hand, especially when you have to solo after someone like Chick Corea.
Right.
I totally understand when I had to solo after someone like Mike Stern.
Right.
I mean, prepping for that gig, if we just backtrack a little bit, prepping for that gig, I practiced so much, like every single day for like hours and hours. I wanted to make sure that I knew the forms of his tunes, that I was just right there to be that role.
What was your process in preparing for that gig? Because it's a huge gig. You're 24 years old. You're going to be playing with an icon.
We're in a trio format too.
Super exposed.
Yeah,
super
exactly.
Exposed, that's a very specific type of trio, like you have really a very prominent voice as an electric bass player in a trio with Mike Stern. Who's on drums?
Absolutely. Well, it was at the time. It was Lee Ritenour's son Wesley.
Oh yeah, okay, I know Wesley.
So it was the three of us. But prepping for that gig, I got sent the music essentially. It was like 2 months before the thing. I got it. So at first I was excited. I'm like, all right, wow, here's the music. I downloaded it and just listening through, following along with the charts and making any notes for myself. And then just every day, just doing like at least an hour, just going through the stuff. And then the songs that I knew that I was going to be taking a solo on, just practicing just the solo sections just to get familiar with it. Because I knew like, okay, yeah, being a trio, and he likes to open up and like feature the other cats. And that's what he did. And then, so we rehearsed, it felt like a glove. And then he was like, all right, so we're also going to do this other just jam kind of tune where we just play anything. Essentially, it's just over a groove. Okay. And he said, you and I are just going to trade. And I'm like, okay. And I mean, it was so much fun. Like it really was, but it was just like, oh man, trading with Mike Stern. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Like, I mean, sure. So yeah, the moments like that, when you get to play with people who are better than you, who have like been on the block so many times, who have this experience, that's what really inspires you and brings up your level of musicianship, because obviously you have to hang on. Yeah. And so you will do what it takes to do that. And I always tell my students, like always be open to the opportunity of playing with musicians who have a lot more experience and who are better than you as well. I mean, that's something that when we look at Stanley, Hadatucci, Herbie Chick, who were playing with Miles and whatnot, and then you look at Miles, who was playing with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Bud Powell. This is how, like,
it's always been being passed down, so to speak, from kind of generation to generation. And I
absolutely.
That's how really it continues on. Like it was more of a fusion lineage or a straight ahead lineage. Like that's how it's always working. And I think that's beautiful. It really to wrap up, what do you got coming up? And I know you have a record out that you cut when you were super young. I want to ask you, well, we don't want to dwell too much on it. I want to know, when was the last time you listened to it? So talk about the name of the record, how old you were, and how long it's been since you've heard it.
Sure. I was probably around 17 going on 18 when I recorded that. That was like the last time that I was here in New Zealand. Okay. And moving over to the States to study at CalArts. Yeah. That was called Double Play. And essentially that, I would just say this. That record doesn't represent anything that I do now. Obviously, that was my late teens. It was what I was into then. And the last time I listened to it, I'm not too sure, to be honest. It's definitely been a while.
I did a record around that age. I don't know. I think I was maybe 19 or 20, and it was never about necessarily like what I was doing on the bass or what I thought was hip. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it was a Christmas present for my mom. Okay, nice. So that's all it was. Nice. Like that's what I did. I cut a record for Christmas, and it was tunes that I knew she was familiar with, via whatever I wanted to do with them,
Sure.
So there's some like bass duo things on there. There's some like quartet stuff.
Nice.
I've never listened to it in my life. I've never heard it all the way through, ever.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay as well. I am like right now. I am working on mine.
That's what I wanted to know. Yeah, cool. What's the instrumentation? Is it more of a produced kind of fusiony multi-track thing, or is it more like 4 or 5 guys in a room, old school? Because I know we've talked a lot about electric bass, but you can play the shit out of the upright. And like, I remember being at the Falls one time, and you were in the house band.
Oh, the good old Falls.
Yeah, the good old Falls. And I can't remember if they were doing the tune or if I just heard you play it, but you played the B section to Inner Urge at tempo on upright. Oh. And I'm just like, damn. Yeah.
I probably did. I had shared that tune a lot in my on both this and the upright. And we'll say, and God bless him. We both miss him. A big reason for shedding that tune, that B section, was Zane Musa. Our brother that we miss a lot.
Love that guy.
Especially, he would come up to CalArts and hang out, and he would play that tune so fast. And I mean, he would just like shred. It was just he was just unstoppable.
Yeah, so dude, that's a whole other episode we could do of sharing Zane stories.
It really is. Yeah. It really is.
But talk about this record.
Yeah. So it's a work in progress right now. It is multi-tracked for sure, just because pandemic and all that. But also just the ability of everyone. A lot of musicians we know can just record at home. So a lot of it is on keyboards is my good friend Steve Weingart, who we might know from the Dave Weckl band back in the day, or Simon Phillips, Protocol as well. He's a good friend of mine, and he's been playing a lot. And I've been doing his record as well right now. He's working on his. And then of course on drums, going to be a couple of different drummers, but so far I've recorded Gene Coy, you'll know,
amazing.
There's going to be some other cats. Channing Cook Holmes, a good friend of mine. Joel Taylor.
I just saw him a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice! Over at the 1881.
He was actually out here in Venice playing at the Brig, doing that steady he's at for like 25 years or something insane.
That gig forever. Yeah, the Brig Band. So, Joel and Peter. Also offered, like, hey, I'll be down as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And my lovely wife, Tara Deva, we have a band together as well. We write music together. So
is it going to be that vocals. Band? Is it going to be the Ben Shepherd experience, or is she? What's kind of the nature of the music?
It's definitely a bit of both. There's definitely a lot of there's definitely on some tracks. There's definitely a lot of multi-tracked bass. Okay. That's for sure. There's a lot of lead bass. So a lot of bass playing melodies for sure. There is I do have a tune where I am, or a tune or two where I'm playing upright as well. There's also something where the bass plays like a chord melody as well, because for those who know my playing, I love to do a lot of chords on the bass, so it features a lot of those elements, which is really cool. And it's been great doing taking my time with the production side. At home. Obviously, this whole period has taught us how to be engineers and producers.
Or video editors or podcast editors or whatever. Everybody's learned some skill.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something. Yes, would I love to go into a room with musicians and just like cut it? Absolutely. I've done that so many times. I
wish I would have done my record like you're doing yours, because I did mine like 2 days in the studio, had everybody there, and it's just like, oh, all right. Like, it wasn't on them. It was like, I'm always learning about pre-production and give dudes notes, and I didn't want to give them too many notes so that they could just do their thing and let it breathe pretty organically. Yeah, but I've listened back and there's some things like, okay, it wasn't on their playing. I wish I would have been a little bit more with instruction or, gave them my vision a little clearer.
Sure.
Because when you're on the clock of 2 days, like, okay, this is take 6. Like if we don't get it by now.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with doing it on your own is, and it could be one of the downsides is that, of course, like if I'm recording a bass solo, I want to get that perfect solo that in my mind that I feel comfortable with, and like if I'm going to listen back to it later on and be like, oh yeah, that I feel good about that.
Yeah,
I go through like so many takes, and of course, like you get to like take 30.
Yeah.
And it's just, and your chops are just like done.
Like whatever, I'll come back to it next Thursday. Like I can't deal with it anymore.
Exactly. You get sick of like the same ideas that you're just playing, because on another take you're like, oh, that idea worked well, let me try it, and now you just hate it. So like that's the only thing. Hold
on 1 second, I'll be right back. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. Hi, just finishing up. Okay, yeah, we're finishing in a couple of minutes. Yep, I know that. Yeah, I'll be there.
Sorry about that. Had to use the restroom. Had way too much coffee earlier today.
I had so much green tea.
Yeah, there's always a couple times like, oh man, am I gonna be able to make it through an hour? Like,
I know, right? I mean, I got to wrap up in a couple of minutes, so I got to.
What's time? Oh, good. What's the name of the record, and what is like a projected release date? Also, come back on when it's out. I want to talk about. Yeah, I want to hear it, and then talk to you about the record in general. Yeah, what are we looking at? What's coming out with it?
So, definitely 2023 with at least maybe a single.
Okay.
Just because I'm in no rush right now to put it out. I really am not. And I don't want to have that pressure. I was like, okay, I got to do it right now.
Right.
Because I've definitely done that to myself in the past, and I got stressed out and I just couldn't do it. Because for years I've been planning this to do a record.
Sure.
So now that I actually feel comfortable with taking my time. So sometime next year, that could change. I don't have a name as yet for for the record. A name hasn't come as yet, but I've got about so far about 2, almost 3 tunes done.
Okay. Done or ready for mix done?
Definitely ready for mix.
Okay.
Done. That's for sure. And also just figuring out how do I when it gets mixed, how do I specifically want it to sound? So also getting listening to a lot of references.
Yeah.
Obviously being a bass heavy record, there's a lot of references of Stanley Clarke.
Sure.
And even some of the early Patitucci records as well. But definitely something that is very relevant sounding to today. So there's a lot of things that I'm definitely discovering. It's a wonderful process of discovering.
Ben, thanks so much for doing this, dude.
Ryan, my pleasure. Great to rap and
catch up
chat with you.
Likewise.
Absolutely, man.
All right. If you are enjoying the Bass Shed podcast, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening to it. Please feel free to leave a comment and or rating on said platform. Talking to Ben was killing. Talking to Ben was absolutely killing. Man, he's in it. He's doing the thing. He's playing with all the cats, like all the cats that Jocko used to play with. He's in it. He's in all of that and carrying on that tradition. And I loved speaking to him about that and the reverence he had for Jocko and all the legends that came before him. Absolutely inspiring. And thank you, Ben. That's about all I got for this one, folks. Thank you to all the new listeners. Welcome to the Bass Shed podcast, as I say at the end of the episode. I probably should have said that at the beginning, huh? Thanks for listening. Hit subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one in a minute.